Okay. Well, welcome everyone to this episode of the Net Impact Boston Career Profile Series. My name's Lawrence Wilson, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Brittany Angelo, who is an impact strategist at Campfire Consulting. So welcome, Brittany. Thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to be here. It's a unique experience for me. Usually I'm the one interviewing people on my podcast, so this is so exciting for me.
Well, I hope we can live up to your expectations. Although I've heard your podcast, and I'm sure we're nowhere near that level. But anyway, nice to know that you've got a bit of experience in front of the microphone as well. Um, so normally for these kind of conversations that we have, these discussions, we talk about the kind of career journey of our guest and sort of how they got to where they are in the kind of impact world. But today, since we are here with you and your expertise, I think we're going to expand out a little bit our discussion because you are something of an expert in the sort of B Corp certification world. So I wonder if you could just sort of kind of introduce us to the concept of and tell us what is a B Corp.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start because I'm going to dive into the world of B Corps. And if people don't know what B Corps are, I should back up. So a B Corp or a certified B Corporation, people say a bunch of different ways. It's a certification for for-profit companies. And it's a third-party verification. And it shows that a company is committed to meeting a rigorous standard for social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. The nonprofit B Lab Global, that's the group that does all the evaluations and they make the criteria for the B Impact Assessment. And the B Impact Assessment changes every so often, and that's the certification, the test that B Corps have to go through to get certified. Mm-hmm. We're currently in the process, the community, because we often are all involved in everything. So we are currently in the process of quite a big undertaking for changing the standards. And we're changing the standards because we want to ensure that the community believes that the certification is holding everyone accountable to the different pillars that the certification supports. So currently, a company has to score above 80 points to become a certified B Corporation. That is changing in the upcoming standards. People will not get points. And the main reason, because that is such a big sticking point, is right now companies are certifying and they're gaining all of their points in the environment section, let's say, but maybe they treat their employees extremely bad and they're getting no points in that section. Mm-hmm. They're still able to become a certified B Corp. And that's been a little bit of a moment of tension within the community. So B Lab Global is trying to rectify this by changing the standards. Mm-hmm. The other important thing just kind of to say about the movement, because it is pretty important and a big distinction. I mentioned that B Lab Global is the nonprofit that does the certification. B Lab Global is different from B Lab US and Canada. So every continent, I believe, most continents have their own B Lab. In the B Lab US and Canada that I work with, their main job is to connect the B Corps in US and Canada to each other, because like I said, the community loves to stay connected. And they really have nothing to do with the certification. And I think that's important because you don't want the people that are verifying your B Corp status to be your best friends that you also go to happy hour with and stay connected with. So it's a big distinction, but it is important. Similar names, but very different jobs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's cool. And so you mentioned that kind of like the standards of assessment are changing, and so you also mentioned like how people treat their employees, environmental things. Like, are those the kind of main areas that you assess with that sort of thing, or are there other kind of subcategories as well?
Yeah, so I'll stick to how the standards currently are because since the standards are still evolving, I don't want to speak on what ifs.
Of course.
But right now, the 5 areas where a B Corp is assessed on is environment. And usually that section can be really, really large if you own your own building, or if you have a really intense supply chain for your product. If you offer a service and you lease your building, the environment section is really small. So it just depends on the company that you have. So environment, how you treat your workers is a very large section. Governance, so how you run your company is another section. Community, so how you kind of treat the people around you, like your physical location in the world. Usually that's also like a lot of like volunteer time and how you kind of support different groups. And then customers. Not me blanking on the fifth category. Customers, pretty self-explanatory, but how you treat your customers. Do you keep their data safe and private? Questions kind of like that.
Nice. Okay, so it's pretty comprehensive. Like it's quite it's a really, and presumably for companies who are looking to sort of attain this certification, you kind of want to keep the barrier reasonably high, right? So that this certification still carries quite a lot of weight.
It's definitely a very rigorous process. Not to scare people away, because that's not the point, but it is supposed to be hard. Most companies usually only score an average score of 50 points. So it is hard to get to that 80. And it takes multiple months to complete, sometimes years, depending on the amount of people you have. And it's supposed to be that way. I feel like I was going to say something else, but the assessment is on average about 200 questions. But again, depending on the size of your company and how you answer questions, different questions open up. So it's kind of like you have gateway questions, and then like the floodgates open, and maybe you just completed, like you now have to answer 20 more questions about that. So usually the bigger the company, the harder it is. And again, that's on purpose, because small firms like Campfire Consulting, we're only 10 people, and where we offer a service, not a product. We don't really have a supply chain. Our assessment's probably one of the smaller ones, and we only have like one, maybe two people working on it.
That makes sense. Well, yes, I mean that certainly makes sense. I hope that we haven't sort of put people off the certification, and I guess maybe now would be a nice opportunity to talk about like the benefits of this certification to the companies that have it. I mean, in your work in the sort of B Corp space, like have you sort of picked up on really positive feedback from the companies that have like attained that certification from their consumer?
Yeah, definitely. And I have a blog post that I recently wrote that I'll share with you so that everybody can read it if they're nerds about this and want to go in depth. But it truly is different why every company wants to become certified. So I tried to collect like the top 10 reasons and share that out. But I would say the number one reason why I hear somebody goes and completes the certification is it gives you access to a like-minded community. B Corps truly only want to work with B Corps. They love working with B Corps. So it's almost this like easy access to another company, like to whatever you're trying to find. It's an easy directory to just search and find somebody. And right off the bat, your mission is aligned, your vision's aligned, and you're going to work well together. So a lot of people say that they become certified just to gain that access. The other top reason that I hear is around like employee retention and attraction. So in today's world, and myself included, I feel like people are often changing jobs frequently. Usually what you find is once somebody works for a B Corp, there's no other way to work. Like you have to work for another B Corp. Also, when you're working for a B Corp, they're held to such a high standard of how they treat you that you're treated so well, you don't really want to leave. So a lot of people become B Corp certified to gain access to a community that will help them keep their employees, but then also attract new employees.
No, it sounds like a really sort of like positive sort of guarantor, I suppose, of like positivity and of quality, doesn't it? It sounds really good.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say it sounds like a cult, and I was like, well, yeah, kind of.
A very nice cult, a good cult.
A good cult, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And I suppose, have you seen like an uptick in the popularity of these of B Corp certification over the last few years?
Yeah. So I guess kind of a little bit of an outdated stat now, but during COVID, so in 2020, 2021 years, B Lab Global saw as many new certifications come through as they had certified B Corps. So they doubled, almost doubled, because not everybody got certified, but the amount of certifications coming in was outrageous to them. So they increased their staff. This movement definitely saw traction during the pandemic. The other thing that I think is really quite amazing is, so B Corps have to get recertified every 3 years. So it's a way to keep up with the standards and ensure that you're improving and you're staying up to date. So this coming year, or I guess the year that we're currently in, because it's March, it's not the beginning of the year anymore. 2024, B Labs is seeing the most amount of recertifications that they ever have seen. So a lot of people are due for recertification right now. So grew in popularity, and a lot of people are sticking with it and continuing to improve and stay within the movement. So I think we're at the beginning of the movement, and we're like, I mean, we're not, because the movement's been around since 24. Yeah. So it's been 20 years. So it's not the beginning of the movement, but I think we're hitting such a popularity streak right now where it's like the movement's gaining traction for sure.
Yeah. Oh, so it's really wonderful to hear. And I think especially in a world where like increasingly like companies, I don't know, Shell are talking about their green credentials and all the rest of it, like to have a real kind of gold standard that you can actually trust is sort of increasingly useful and sort of needed, isn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to name a quick couple of B Corps, just in case if people are like, cool, you've talked about B Corps, but like, who are they? So like some of the more popular ones, I guess like globally, like, so Patagonia is a B Corp. They're one of the founding B Corps. So they're definitely really big in the movement. Some other really big ones is like Seventh Generation. I don't know if you buy your socks from Bombas, but I live and breathe by Bombas. So that's another like really popular one. Athleta is like a athletic company. They're a B Corp. Grove, they feel kind of popular. Although if you don't have a house and you're not cleaning your house, maybe you don't shop at Grove. But those are just a few that I'll just name, and I can keep going. So I'll stop there.
Nice. No, it's nice to know that, like, especially for a consumer, there's a lot of options out there where you can sort of, with your own shopping and consuming habits, you can sort of adjust in that sense.
And not me wearing a Cotopaxi jacket right now. I guess I have to shout out Cotopaxi.
That's good to know. Cool. So I guess now that we've kind of established like what a B Corp is, and we'll come back into in terms of like how other people, if they want to suggest it to their own corporations, that kind of thing. But I also wanted to touch on the work that you do professionally with Campfire Consulting, because I think maybe like impact consulting is maybe a term that might be quite new to some of our members. Maybe it's not a sort of a job title or a career path that like many people might know about. So could you maybe sort of like give us an introduction to the life of an impact consultant?
Yeah. It's funny. So on my podcast, I was recently talking to somebody about the word sustainability, and she was from the UK. So I a little bit threw Americans under the bus, and I was like, Americans get so lazy, and I feel like we're using the word sustainability as like this lazy catch-all for like what sustainability actually means, and nobody has the same definition about what sustainability means. I feel like we're now in this movement where like impact is becoming a quick like catch-all for what it truly means. So to us, impact consulting is a term that we use to talk about our consulting services that specifically focus on creating a positive social and environmental impact alongside a financial sustainability approach. So what that means to us is that we're helping companies either try to become a B Corp, become a better B Corp, or really learn from the B Impact assessment and use it as like a guiding framework to improve on their business practices. And when our team is usually working with our clients, we are typically offering strategic advice, guidance, or support to enhance their social and environmental performance, again, while really maintaining that profitability. We often say that the B Corp standards, it's like a 3-leg stool. You have to care about your people, you have to care about your planet, and you have to care about being profitable in order to keep staying in business. So those 3 Ps are really like the 3 things that matter. But I feel like often businesses care so much about profit that they put that above everything else. And B Corps and what we do is we're really helping companies put the planet and their people just as high as profit, if not higher.
Oh, fantastic. And so if someone's listening to this today and they're thinking, "Well, that sounds fantastic. It's exactly what my company or the organization I work for needs." I would get in touch with you and sort of take a look at the Campfire website and sort of see what sort of resources you have there to kick it off. Is that what you'd recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put my email. I'll give you my email. You can share it out however you want. But yeah, it's campfire.consulting is our website. We have quite a bit of blogs on there talking about how to learn more. I would encourage people to read them if they don't want to just straight talk with me. But I love talking to people, as we can tell. I've been here for 20 minutes and I can keep going. So people should reach out. I can share my calendar link as well. I'm happy to just do an exploratory call, see where people are at, set some benchmarks. I'm really good at providing roadmaps. So if people want a ton of hands-on support, our consultants are able to implement ourselves into your business and almost become an employee and help you move through this sort of planning. We also do, like I said, roadmaps so that we can just teach you how to teach the company as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, definitely includes all kinds of links and information and stuff at the end of this. I'm very glad you're happy to carry on talking as well, because now that we've sort of kind of covered the sort of professional side of things, I also wanted to dig in a little bit into your own kind of personal journey, because I mean, like I said, this sort of impact consulting is maybe a route that some people in our network are looking at with interest, but perhaps don't necessarily know how to point themselves in that direction. So could you maybe sort of tell us a little bit more about your own journey, about how you sort of came to be working at this point?
Well, I was born in Worcester, Mass, back in 1993. No, I'm kidding. No, really, I can tell you everything. But so I like to say I have a really unique experience. I went to a private high school focused on ski racing. So I didn't have this like background where like I was in a normal high school and I had access to all these like clubs and environmental teams. So I really didn't, I mean, I spent every day outside skiing, but I didn't have this access to environmental science the way that maybe some people do in high school now. So I got to college thinking that I wanted to become an athletic trainer because I wanted to help people better in their sports. But then I myself got injured. My whole life kind of got uprooted. And I was like, I can't fix myself. How am I ever going to fix anybody else? So I was like, oh, the planet is falling to pieces. Let me try to fix the planet. So I learned about environmental science in school. I went to Plymouth State University in, I guess, the middle of the state in New Hampshire, but a lot of people think that anything past Plymouth is Canada. And the exposure that Plymouth gave me to the science of environmental science was really quite valuable. I learned a ton. I was always doing field work whenever I could, also volunteering for field work whenever I could. I think volunteering is a huge portion of why I got to where I am, which I can touch on that. But I just learned so much about science. So when I graduated from college, I did a lot of field jobs where I was collecting data, analyzing data, and then educating the public about the data that I found. And I say all that to say, like, I quickly learned that as much as I loved being outside, my body couldn't handle being outside in all of the different elements. So I had to find a different way to feel like I was saving the planet, but not being the scientist on the ground every single day. So I started to go in this direction of educating people about what I was seeing. So my first job was as an invasive species educator. So I was telling people why it's important to drain your boats when you move from lake to lake and to not bring invasive species from one body to the next. And then I came back to the East Coast. That was out west in Utah. And I was educating people about the water quality of the beaches in Boston, because you can't swim in just anywhere off the coast of Boston. You kind of have to pay attention to the water. So I was teaching people about like what to look for and why maybe you shouldn't go in every single open area. And then I moved up to New Hampshire and I was doing some education in schools, talking about water quality, air quality, climate change. And then I ultimately landed in Portland, Maine. And I was a sea kayak guide for a little bit, teaching kids how to paddle on open water, but then also how to live on an island with no electricity. It was a super cool job. I absolutely loved it, but you can't kayak in open water during the winter in upstate Maine. So I found Revision Energy, which was my last job. I was there for almost 7 years. And Revision, I owe so much to Revision. They taught me so much about marketing, but then also about how to just talk to the public and really get them to listen to scientists and data. I learned so much from them. I was there for just about 6 years. And I started volunteering in the B Corp community from my time at Revision, because Revision is an amazing B Corp, and really leading the way in a lot of factors. But what I figured out was, as much as I care about solar, I really, really cared about this B Corp community, and I wanted to see the B Corp community connect more. And Revision is a regional solar company. They don't really care about connecting B Corps all across the nation. So I did this volunteer job where I was connecting B Corps in New England for a conference. It was called the BLD, stands for B Corp Leadership Development Conference. And I brought together all of the leaders at B Corps in New England to the University of New Hampshire for a one-day conference, sharing best practices, communicating with each other, because like I said, B Corps can't stand to be apart. And from that volunteer work, I loved what I was doing. I had so much fun. Somebody put me on the main stage and talked to everybody, and I was like, I can't get enough of this. And from that volunteer work, what now is Campfire Consulting, back then was Dirigo Collective, they approached me and they were like, hey, you are amazing. And I was like, thanks. And I told them that I was a little bit unhappy with my job at Revision. I wanted to do more of this connecting of B Corps. And they were like, we can give you a platform to do that. So from my volunteer work, I ended up meeting the people that hired me to be now working at Campfire Consulting. And for the last 2 years, I've been on the podcast called Responsibly Different, talking to B Corps about what makes them responsibly different, sharing that story out with the world. And then we recently opened up this idea of impact consulting, where we're helping people become B Corps. It is a new service line for us. We've only been doing it for about 5 months. But it was what I really wanted to do, and they gave me the platform to be able to do that. So that's kind of my story.
That's brilliant. I mean, to be honest, like, having met you today, like, you're obviously very talented at that kind of outreach and sort of explaining these kind of things in a way that, like, is, you know, makes it sound like understandable and appealing and all that sort of stuff. So you're obviously found yourself in the right kind of role.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
So you mentioned kind of volunteering with the B Corp community, and I imagine that's, you know, hopefully as a result of it, you know, spreading the message through the podcast, people, if they were listening to this and they did want to get involved, are there sort of places that they can go to sort of kind of volunteer as an individual with the B Corp community?
Yeah, I would say there's a few ways to get involved. So depending on where you live, there's what B Labs calls networks. And networks are groups of people that connect either regionally, based off of their role, their identity as a human, or just their interests. So networks kind of expand across all areas. But the easiest ones to get involved with, if you're not physically working for a B Corp, are what are called B locals. And those are the B locals that are regional based. So down in Boston, there's B Local Boston. And anybody can join the group. Anybody can kind of follow along on their newsletters, attend their events. But I know that those B locals are always looking for volunteers and support around their events and with marketing and everything to do with hosting events. I guess I'll echo again. And then where I am in the seacoast of New Hampshire, I'm like in between Boston and Maine. And based in Portland, there's another B local called the Maine B Corps group. They also always are looking for volunteers. So I would say that those are the two easiest ways to get involved regionally. It's a little harder to get involved with the other groups if you don't work for B Corps. But the B locals will be a really easy way to start to learn about the B Corps in your area. The other thing that I would just kind of advertise to people is there's a B Corp directory on B Labs' website. And again, I'll share the link so people can use it. But if you're interested in this movement, I would encourage you to find a B Corp that just fascinates you, and reach out to them and just say like, hey, I'm interested in learning more about you for X reason. And people that work at B Corps love talking about B Corps. So usually they will respond with open arms and kind of bring you into the movement. I'm not saying that it's a sure win if you're looking for a job, but it's an easy way to kind of start to learn about the movement and ideas and how to get involved. So I guess I would say start there.
Fantastic. And I can also sort of vouch for that. I met some of the guys from Be Local Boston, and they're really good, a really impressive group of people. And
Cool.
especially, I think like a lot of volunteer work
Yeah.
doesn't have like a clear kind of connection to companies and to jobs and to
Yeah.
industry in that sense. But I think like the B Corp world seems to have a really strong kind of connection there. So for people who are looking for work or looking to meet people in work, like I think it's a really positive thing to emphasize. Cool. All right. I mean, we sort of touched on your kind of volunteer experience, a little bit on your educational experience as well. Like, have you found that like, I also wanted to ask like whether your sort of continuing education has been able to sort of help with your kind of career. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, from what you were telling me, like your career was a little bit outdoors, a little bit indoors, it sort of moves around a little bit. Like, did you find that you had to kind of retrain when you took those steps, or was it reasonably straightforward?
Although my path kind of seems like all over the place, I will say that one job always led really nicely into the next. So I actually didn't have to reteach myself much. This recent transition from Revision Energy to Campfire Consulting probably was my biggest switch. Like I had to learn how to do all of the things with the podcast, which I did not know. So I now know audio production, which is just fascinating and a great skill. I also really didn't know anything about project management, which when you work at a consulting firm, somebody has to manage the project. So I have been taking a few classes kind of around like that. And then I don't know how much your group has ever talked about Scope 3, but I feel like Scope 3, when it comes to carbon accounting, is a really big movement in the sustainability space where companies currently are not calculating their Scope 3 emissions, but they really need to start. So I've been taking a continuing education class through the University of New Hampshire around carbon footprinting and carbon accounting. And that's really been super beneficial to me because, again, this movement around companies caring about sustainability it's still new. We're seeing this large movement where companies are hiring internal sustainability managers, or they're looking for outside contractors to help them write their impact reports or message and tell their story to their audience about why caring about the planet is important. And I found that, yes, I can teach myself some of these things, but really taking a continuing education class so that I can have that certification to say, I can calculate your carbon footprint. I can tell you how to measure your Scope 3 emissions. That is really useful to like be able to say to a large corporation, like, no, hire me. I can legally do this.
Yeah, it's a brilliant skill to be able to sort of bring along and sort of present. Brilliant. All right. Well, we sort of appear to be kind of running to the end of our time. There's a big angry timer in the top of my screen. So I guess before we go, is there anything extra that you wanted to share with the Net Impact Boston community?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I just kind of want to say is it's really important that companies do start thinking about this idea that there's more to business than just having a profit. And I think new people coming into the movement and the industry are going to start asking serious questions about what's your business doing to be better. So I would encourage anybody that works higher up at a company to really push themselves to start thinking about how are you going to answer these questions so that your business can be around for the long haul. And if you're new starting your career in this industry, don't be afraid to be a mover and shaker, because other people are asking the hard questions when they go into their interviews. And if you care about the planet, like, be proud of that, push back on companies that maybe don't, and hold out for the job with a company that does care about the planet and does care about you as a worker. I just think that unless the employees start demanding more from companies, the companies aren't going to change. And that's what the B Corp movement is really trying to change. And if B Corp certification sounds a little scary, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. But also, there's another certification that's a little bit smaller, easier to obtain, and a great starting point that would then get you into B Corp certification. So I'll just leave people with a tidbit to say, go research 1% for the planet. It basically is just saying that as a company, you give 1% of your revenue back to nonprofits that are caring about our planet. Volunteer work counts as part of that revenue. Charitable donations count. It's a really interesting movement that Patagonia started, which again is a B Corp. So it's tied to the B Corp movement, but it's extremely different, and it's I don't want to say easier to obtain, but sometimes a smaller barrier.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. And like I said, we'll include information to all of this when we post it up. Scope 3, 1%, Campfire Consulting, the whole lot. But also, if people want to hear more from you, Brittany, your own podcast, what was that called? Just remind us of the name.
Yeah, it's called Responsibly Different. We try to put out an episode at least once a month, but we have about 100 episodes in already recorded, so definitely go back and listen to them. And if I may, I'll say, for the sustainability geek out there that really loves to hear about sustainability, recently we did an episode with Stonyfield Organics, and it dives into carbon footprinting, carbon accounting, scopes, and just 2023 goals around a company caring about their supply chain. So it's a really interesting episode.
Fantastic. Oh, thanks very much. I'll make sure I'll give that a go.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, yeah, like I said, thank you so much, Brittany, for joining us today. This was a really interesting
Cool.
discussion. And thank you everybody else for tuning in. We will be back with more interviews this year. We have plenty more guests lined up. And also, if you are interested in hearing a bit more about what's coming up at Net Impact Boston, we'll be posting a few events that we've got coming up this year, some reasonably large ones, which are quite exciting as well. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you again, Brittany, for joining us. Bye-bye.